Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep on something I think all of us are always trying to figure out how to boost our brain power. And more specifically, we're looking at those small changes that can have surprisingly big impact, especially when it comes to focusing and learning better. We've got two really interesting articles to dive into today. One looks at the link between moving your body and how well you learn, and the other explores the mental benefits of taking a break from the internet. You ready to get those synapses firing?
Always ready to learn something new.
Okay, so first up, this study from the University of Montreal really caught my eye. Basically, they found that light physical activity while you're studying can be just as good or even better than just sitting still for learning new things. It's kind of crazy to think that, like, fidgeting could actually help you learn.
Right. You know what I think is really cool here is this idea of warmed up brain. Like you can think of your brain as an engine. So a little bit of movement gets that blood pumping, it increases your heart rate, and then that helps you focus better. Kind of like how you warm up before a workout, but for your brain.
And what I thought was really interesting about this study is that they didn't just, test this in some kind of perfect lab setting. They were working with students, and they made sure that there were like real-world distractions going on, things like emails and text messages popping up. So it's actually pretty relevant to, how we learn in our everyday lives.
Yeah, for sure. And the funny thing is, even though the improvements they saw in the students' test scores were small, they were consistent, which I think is huge. Like even a difference of a couple percentage points, that could be the difference between passing or failing an exam. Or, even getting that job you really want.
Yeah, that's a good point. Small gains can really add up over time. But, okay, here's where I got a little confused. They also found that, like, doing moderate exercise,
Hmm.
like actually hopping on a stationary bike or something, actually made people's concentration worse, which I thought was surprising. What's the explanation for that?
Hmm. So think of it this way. Your attention is like a vase, like a closed vase, and it can only hold so much.
Hmm.
When you're doing really intense physical activity, that takes up a lot of your attention. So you have less attention left over to actually focus on learning.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Like usually after a tough workout, I just want to zone out and listen to music or something. Definitely not tackle anything too mentally challenging. Do you notice that too?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely a sweet spot when it comes to like how much physical activity is actually helpful for your brain.
Totally. So it seems like finding that balance is key. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit now and talk about another kind of brain workout, disconnecting from the internet. This article we found looked at a study where people completely blocked internet access on their phones for 2 whole weeks.
And the results were pretty amazing, honestly. Like, we're talking improvements in people's mental health that were comparable to what you see with antidepressants. And their attention spans got better, too. It was basically like reversing 10 years of age-related decline in their thinking abilities.
Wow, that is really impressive. There's this one quote from the study that really stuck with me. It said something like, "Our psychology hasn't caught up to our constant connectivity," which I thought was such a good way to put it. Like, we're so used to being online 24/7, but our brains just aren't built to handle it.
Yeah. And here's what's really interesting. When these people were offline, they weren't just, sitting around doing nothing. They actually started doing other things like hobbies, socializing more, and spending time outdoors. And, all those things also help boost your mental health.
So it seems like it's not about, ditching technology forever, but maybe it's about being a little bit more mindful about how much we use it and making sure it's not taking over our lives.
Exactly. This study really makes you think about how we can manage our digital lives better so that our brains can actually function at their best. It's really kind of amazing when you think about it. We have so much more control over how well our brains work than we think. Like we always hear people talking about intelligence as if it's, set in stone. But these studies are showing us that we can actually change and improve our brain power. And the best part is, it doesn't have to be these huge, drastic changes. Just making a few little tweaks can make a big difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's pretty empowering to think about. Like, we're not just stuck with whatever brain power we think we have. We can actually work on making it better. Speaking of those little tweaks, I was hoping we could go back to that University of Montreal study for a minute. I thought it was really interesting that they made a point of having like realistic distractions in the background while the students were studying.
Oh, yeah, that was a super important detail. It wasn't like they were just, sitting in some silent room. They had stuff going on around them, like emails and notifications, just like you'd have at home or in the library.
Right, so even with all that going on, that light physical activity still helped them learn better. That's so helpful to know, especially these days when it feels like we're constantly bombarded with information and distractions.
Absolutely. It's like giving our brains a little extra boost to help filter out all that noise and really zero in on what's important.
I like that, but a mental workout for our focus muscles.
Hmm.
And one thing I wanted to touch on from that study is that they also emphasized how important it is to find what works best for you. Like they gave the example of using a stability ball as a chair. Some people love it, others find it totally distracting. So it
Uh-huh.
seems like it's all about experimenting and figuring out what feels right for you personally.
There's no magic formula that's going to work for everyone. It's about listening to your body and figuring out what helps you feel the most, alert and engaged. It's so true. And you know what this reminds me of? The whole idea of active rest.
Oh yeah, active rest. Tell me more about that.
Well, we usually think of rest as just, being completely still and passive. But actually, research shows that active rest might be way more beneficial. It's basically a way to refresh and reset your mind without being totally sedentary.
So instead of just, crashing on the couch after a long day, maybe go for a walk or do some light stretching.
That's the idea. Even a little bit of physical activity can help clear your head and, reduce stress and boost your mood. And then that obviously can help you focus and learn better when you go back to whatever you were doing.
It's like hitting the refresh button on your brain.
Yeah.
And you know what? This actually ties in perfectly with what we were talking about earlier about disconnecting from the internet. Remember how that study found that people started doing more offline activities when they weren't glued to their phones? Things like spending time in nature, pursuing hobbies, connecting with people face to face. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a really interesting parallel. Both studies seem to be saying that it's super important to step away from our screens and do things that nourish our minds and bodies in a more well-rounded way. It makes you wonder, is there a connection between how addicted we are to technology and our increasingly sedentary lifestyles? Like, are we so hooked on our devices that we're forgetting how to move our bodies and actually engage with the world around us?
Mm, that's a really thought-provoking question. It's definitely a complicated issue with a lot of different factors at play. But I do think there's a connection there. Like, our devices are designed to keep us hooked. And the more time we spend on them, the less time we have for other things, including physical activity.
Right. It's like this vicious cycle. We're constantly getting bombarded with notifications and updates, and it's so easy to just get sucked in. And the next thing you know, you've spent hours sitting in front of a screen, barely moving a muscle.
And, all that lack of movement can really do a number on our brains. We've already talked about how good physical activity is for learning and focusing, but it's also super important for our overall brain health. Moving around improves blood flow to the brain, it helps grow new brain cells, and it even protects against age-related cognitive decline.
Wow. So it's not just about, you know, boosting our brain power in the moment. It's
Yeah.
about making sure our brains stay healthy for the long haul. And it sounds like it's never too late to start making those changes.
Exactly. Every little bit counts. And even if you're not, a gym rat or a marathon runner, there are tons of easy ways to move more in your everyday life. Take the stairs instead of the elevator walk or bike to work if you can do some stretching or light exercises during your lunch break.
All great ideas. I was
Yes.
actually reading about something called micro breaks the other day. Have you heard of those?
Oh, yeah. Micro breaks are a great way to fight back against all that sitting we do. It's basically just taking short breaks throughout the day to stand up, stretch, walk around for a couple minutes.
It sounds so simple, but effective, like a quick way to break up those long stretches of sitting.
Right. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You could walk to the water cooler, do a few laps around the office, just stand up and stretch at your desk.
The important thing is to make it a regular habit.
Exactly. Even a few minutes of movement every hour can make a huge difference in how you feel, both physically and mentally.
Love that. Little bursts of energy and focus throughout the day. And you know what? This brings us back to that idea of personalization again. There are so many ways to add movement into our lives.
Hmm.
It's all about finding what works for you and what you enjoy. It shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be something you look forward to.
Couldn't agree more, whether it's dancing, hiking, swimming, or just taking a leisurely stroll. Find something that gets you moving and that makes you feel good.
So true. Okay, so speaking of feeling good, I want to circle back to the mental health benefits of disconnecting from the digital world for a bit. That study where people blocked internet access on their phones for 2 weeks, I mean, the results were pretty incredible, right?
Yeah, they really were. Those improvements in people's mood, their anxiety levels, their overall sense of well-being, it was pretty significant. It was almost like taking a break from all that constant information and stimulation allowed them to kind of reconnect with themselves and find a sense of peace.
Totally. It's like hitting the reset button on our mental state.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, when I spend too much time online, I start to feel overwhelmed and anxious
Yeah.
and disconnected from what's happening around me. But when I make an effort to unplug, I can really feel a difference in my mood and energy levels.
I feel the same way. It's like our devices are constantly fighting for our attention, pulling us away from what really matters. But when we make space for those things, real life connections, nature, silent stillness, it's like we're giving ourselves a chance to recharge and replenish our mental and emotional energy.
And I don't think it has to be this all or nothing approach either. We don't have to throw away our phones or go live in a cave. It's about finding a balance, setting some boundaries, and making conscious choices about how and when we use technology.
Exactly. It's about taking back control of our time and attention and using it in ways that actually support our well being. Maybe that means scheduling some digital detox time or making certain areas of your home tech free zones.
Ooh, I like those ideas.
Uh,
It's about having a more intentional and mindful relationship with technology instead of letting it run the show.
Right. And it's not just about, reducing the negative stuff. It's also about making room for things that bring you joy and fulfillment. Spending time with people you love, doing hobbies that light you up, enjoying the beauty of nature.
And a lot of times those things don't require technology at all. It's about connecting with ourselves, with each other, and with the world around us in a more real and meaningful way.
Exactly. That's where the real magic happens. When we step away from all the digital noise and really immerse ourselves in the richness of life, we open ourselves up to a whole world of possibilities.
I love that it's like rediscovering the simple joys of being human.
You know what? This actually reminds me of our conversation about personalization earlier. Just like there's no one right way to add more movement into our lives. There's no single right way to disconnect from technology either. It's about finding what works best for you based on your own needs, preferences, and lifestyle.
Absolutely. For some people, that might mean doing a full-on digital detox for a few days or weeks. For others, it might mean setting daily limits on their screen time or using apps that block distracting websites. It's all about finding what feels sustainable and empowering for you personally.
Totally. It's about progress, not perfection. We're all going to have days where we slip up or just need to be plugged in for whatever reason. But the important thing is to keep coming back to those intentions and keep working towards a more balanced and fulfilling relationship with technology.
Well said. It's a journey, not a destination. And like with any journey, there will be bumps in the road. But with awareness, intention, and a little bit of self-compassion, we can navigate those bumps and create a digital life that truly supports our well-being. So speaking of navigating, I want to shift back to physical activity for a sec. I recently learned about something called walking meditation. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah, walking meditation's great. It's like you're getting the benefits of physical activity and meditation all at once. So you're walking, but you're also really focusing on the sensations of your body, like how your feet are moving, the feeling of the ground beneath you, the rhythm of your breath.
It sounds so peaceful and grounding and like something anyone can do no matter what their fitness level is or how much experience they have with meditation.
Exactly. Even just a few minutes of walking meditation can really help lower stress, improve focus, and make you feel more present. It's a great way to reconnect with your body and the present moment.
You know what I'm realizing from all this? It seems like our physical, mental, and emotional well-being are all so interconnected. When we take care of one, the others benefit too.
Totally. It's all intertwined. That's why it's so important to think about well-being from a holistic perspective.
I've learned so much in these studies today. They really show that we have more control over our well-being than we might think. Even making small changes to our physical and digital habits can make a big difference in our brains and our lives.
It's pretty amazing, right? Like we're not just stuck with whatever we're given. We can actually shape our own well-being.
Exactly. And it's not about being perfect or trying to reach some impossible ideal. It's about those small, sustainable changes that actually fit into our lives and that we enjoy. Progress over perfection, always.
I love that. And you know what? If we think even bigger, these findings could have a real impact beyond just our personal lives. Like think about education, workplace productivity, even public health. Imagine if we created environments that actually supported cognitive function and well-being in schools, offices, and communities.
Yeah, that would be incredible. It's like shifting from a reactive approach to a more proactive one, where we're focused on preventing problems before they start by really taking care of our brains and bodies.
Exactly. And it all starts with awareness, understanding how our physical and digital habits are affecting how our brains work, our mental health, and our overall well-being.
And then taking action, trying different things, seeing what works for you, and making those small but meaningful changes. I know it can feel a bit overwhelming at first, but remember, even tiny tweaks can have huge effects.
Oh, totally. Remember that study we talked about earlier where people just blocked the internet on their phones for 2 weeks and it had all those amazing positive effects? It just shows how adaptable our brains are and how much potential we have for change.
Right. It's like giving our brains a chance to reset and get back to functioning at their best. And the coolest part is we don't need any fancy gadgets or expensive programs to do it. We can start making these changes today.
Absolutely. Go for a walk, put your phone on airplane mode for a while, read a book instead of scrolling through social media, do something you enjoy that doesn't involve a screen. These simple things can have a huge impact on your well-being.
And you know what? The more we do these things, the more natural they become. It's like this positive feedback loop. We feel better, so we do more of the things that make us feel good, and then we feel even better.
It's a beautiful cycle. And it's not just about feeling better, it's about living better.
Yeah.
When our brains are working at their best, we're more engaged, more creative, more productive, and more present in our lives. We connect with people on a deeper level, we contribute more to the world, and we feel a greater sense of purpose.
It's like we're unlocking our full potential. And it all starts with those small, intentional choices we make every day.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a little challenge. What's one small change you can make today to create an environment that supports your brain power? It doesn't have to be anything huge, just one step in the right direction. Pay attention to how it feels. Notice any shifts in your energy, focus, or mood. You might be surprised at how powerful those small changes can be.
I love that challenge. And don't forget, you can find links to all the studies we talked about in the show notes below. We encourage you to dive in and see what resonates with you. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. What insights stood out to you? What changes are you thinking about making? Share your comments below. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of brain power. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.